Spring is here, and the deals are hotter than ever at Shack Shop. Turn heads with stunning bikinis, now on sale. Explore the deep with cutting-edge underwater drones. Gear up for adventure with durable tents for every trip. Ride into spring with unbeatable deals on bikes. Fresh styles, women's fashion, and must-have looks, all discounted. Don't miss the Shack Shop Spring Fling Sale. These prices won't last. Shop now and make this spring unforgettable, only at Shack Shop.
Emma Chamberlain's podcast pause sparks bigger questions about fame, burnout, and reinvention. Emma Chamberlain built a digital empire by doing something most creators spend years trying to master, making authenticity feel effortless. She didn't rise to internet superstardom through polished perfection or scripted performances. She became a phenomenon by leaning into awkwardness, honesty, humor, and vulnerability in a way that reshaped online culture. Her influence stretched far beyond YouTube, expanding into fashion, business, podcasting, and even film. So when Emma Chamberlain revealed she was stepping away from her wildly successful Anything Goes podcast for an indefinite break, it landed as much bigger news than a routine content pause. For millions who have treated the podcast almost like a weekly ritual, the announcement felt personal. And for Emma, it appears even more personal, a sudden announcement that wasn't so sudden. In a candid 17-minute video titled Bittersweet, Emma explained she would be putting the podcast on hold without a timeline for return. Not weeks, not months. Indefinite. The word immediately sparked speculation. Was this burnout? A creative pivot? A quiet goodbye? Emma framed it differently. Not as an ending, but as an interruption necessary for growth. According to her, the decision didn't come from collapse, exhaustion, or disillusionment. It came from clarity. That may be what made the announcement so surprising. Usually, creators disappear when things are visibly unraveling. Emma stepped back while things were still thriving. That distinction matters, because in today's creator economy, walking away from something successful can seem almost unthinkable. Yet Emma suggested that success itself can sometimes be the very reason change becomes necessary, when success starts feeling like a cage. One of the more striking themes in Emma's announcement was her acknowledgement that something working does not necessarily mean it should continue unchanged. That runs against how internet careers often function. Most creators are told to keep feeding the algorithm, keep posting, keep scaling, keep repeating whatever works. Never pause momentum. Emma's decision pushes against that philosophy. She appears to be arguing something increasingly relevant in digital culture. Growth sometimes requires disruption, even when, maybe especially when, things look successful from the outside. For someone whose brand has always centered around creative intuition, the move almost feels consistent with her larger evolution. Risky, but consistent. Why the break may be bigger than a podcast. Some fans initially viewed the announcement as simply a content scheduling change, but Emma hinted it reflects something broader. She suggested it's tied to reevaluating the way she structures her work and creative life overall. That changes the story. This may not be about taking time off from one show. It may be about redesigning an entire typewriter. And that has fueled intense curiosity over what comes next, because Emma Chamberlain rarely moves with intention. Every pivot in her career, from YouTube star to fashion icon to entrepreneur, has usually preceded a new phase. This may be another one. The pressure of always being on. Podcasting can appear deceptively simple. Talk into a microphone, upload, repeat. But long-form personal podcasting can demand relentless emotional output, especially when your brand depends on openness. Week after week, creators mine their thoughts, anxieties, stories, and perspectives. Eventually, that can become its own performance. Even authenticity can become labor. And perhaps that tension sits somewhere behind Emma's decision. Not exhaustion necessarily, but the awareness that creative honesty can start feeling mechanical when forced into routine. That realization has pushed many creators toward pauses. Few have been as transparent about it, why fans are reacting so emotionally. For many listeners, Anything Goes wasn't background content. It was comfort, companionship, advice, noise to fill lonely commutes, a familiar voice during uncertain moments. Podcast audiences often form unusually intimate bonds, more intimate in some ways than traditional entertainment creates, which may explain why Emma's announcement triggered such emotional reactions online. For some, it felt less like a show going on hiatus and more like a friend saying they need distance. That emotional attachment says something about what Emma built and why this announcement feels so consequential, not burnout. Reinvention? Emma made a point to push back on the assumption she's stepping away because she's depleted.
That distinction matters. Burnout suggests breakdown. Reinvention suggests expansion. She seems to view this through the second lens. That may be the most revealing part of all, because it hints she may not be retreating. She may be repositioning. And there's a big difference. Could YouTube benefit most from this? One fascinating part of her announcement was the suggestion she may redirect energy toward visual storytelling again. That caught attention fast, because many longtime followers still associate Emma first with YouTube, and some have argued for years that her strongest creative medium has always been video. Her editing style helped reshape creator culture. Her visual instincts often separated her from peers. If this break creates space for a deeper return to that format, many fans may see the podcast pause less as loss and more as trade-off. Less content in one place, potentially stronger content in another. The timing raises eyebrows. The announcement also arrives during a fascinating moment in Emma's career. She's expanding in multiple directions: business ventures, fashion partnerships, film projects, lifestyle branding, creative collaborations. In other words, this isn't someone shrinking their footprint, it's someone expanding it, which makes the podcast pause feel less like withdrawal and more like strategic recalibration. That may be why industry watchers are paying attention too, because creator career pivots often signal broader shifts, a sign of a changing creator economy. Emma's move may reflect something bigger than one influencer. It may represent a growing rejection of perpetual digital output. More creators have started openly challenging hustle culture, questioning algorithms, choosing slower growth over constant visibility, protecting creative energy. Emma may simply be one of the biggest names embodying that shift, and because of her influence, others may follow. Why walking away can sometimes strengthen a brand. Counterintuitive as it sounds, stepping back can deepen relevance. Absence can sharpen interest. Mystery can fuel anticipation. Scarcity can elevate value. Some of the strongest reinventions in entertainment history began with pauses. Sometimes distance creates momentum. Emma may understand that. Or perhaps she's simply following instincts. Possibly both. What happens to anything goes now? That remains unclear, and uncertainty is part of what has fans speculating. Will the podcast return reimagined? A new format? Less frequent episodes? Seasonal releases? A total rebrand? No one knows. Maybe even Emma doesn't yet. And oddly, that ambiguity may be part of the point. An indefinite break suggests openness, not conclusion. Why this feels very Emma. In a strange way, the move fits. Emma Chamberlain has often built her brand by refusing standard internet formulas. She broke YouTube editing norms, rejected polished influencer culture, turned vulnerability into aesthetic, moved into business unusually young, and repeatedly pivoted before audiences expected it. Taking a thriving podcast and pressing pause because intuition says evolve? That feels aligned. Risky, but aligned. Fans wonder, is film the next frontier? Another question now swirling. Could acting become a much larger focus? With a feature film debut already adding to her resume, some wonder whether this break clears room for more screen work. If so, the podcast hiatus may look very different in hindsight. Less pause, more transition, and maybe first step towards something much larger. The bigger conversation about knowing when to change. Perhaps what resonates most in Emma's announcement is not celebrity intrigue. It's the universal theme underneath it. Knowing when something good has stopped being right. That's hard, because success often makes change feel dangerous. But Emma appears to be making a different argument. Sometimes staying put is the bigger risk. That idea reaches far beyond podcasting, which may be why so many connected with it. Not goodbye, but something else. For now, Emma insists this isn't disappearance. It's adjustment. She's not vanishing, she's reassessing. And perhaps that distinction will define whether this becomes remembered as a temporary pause, or the beginning of Emma Chamberlain's next reinvention. Given her history, betting against reinvention seems unwise. One chapter may be pausing, but another may already be starting. And that may be the real story.